Welcome back to Am I Wrong? Where we explore the most heart-wrenching moral dilemmas that real people face every single day. Today's story is about grandparents, boundaries, and a question that tears families apart. Do toxic people have a right to be in your children's lives just because they're family? If you've ever struggled with setting boundaries for your kids, or if you've dealt with overbearing grandparents, this one's for you. Smash that like button, subscribe for more intense stories, and drop a comment. Would you let toxic grandparents have access to your children? Let's dive into today's story. Our story comes from a 32-year-old mother, we'll call her Sarah, and it starts like many wonderful stories do, with the birth of a child. Sarah and her husband Mark had just welcomed their first baby, a beautiful little girl named Emma. Like most new parents, they were exhausted, overwhelmed, and absolutely in love. Sarah posted her story on Reddit with a simple but loaded question. Am I the asshole for refusing to let my parents meet their grandchild? Now that sounds harsh, doesn't it? What kind of person denies grandparents the chance to meet their grandchild? But as Sarah explains, this decision didn't come out of nowhere. Sarah's relationship with her parents has always been complicated. And by complicated, I mean toxic. Sarah grew up as what she calls the family caretaker. From a young age, she wasn't allowed to just be a kid. She was expected to manage her parents' emotions, mediate their fights, and essentially act as a third parent to her younger siblings. Her mother suffered from untreated anxiety and depression, but refused to get professional help. Instead, she relied on Sarah. If mom was having a bad day, it was Sarah's job to fix it. If mom and dad were fighting, Sarah had to play therapist at age 12. Sarah writes, I don't remember having a childhood. I remember being responsible for everyone else's happiness. If my mom was upset and I couldn't make her feel better, she'd tell me I was selfish and didn't care about her. This is called parentification, when a child is forced to take on adult responsibilities and emotional labor that they're not developmentally ready for. And it's a form of abuse. When Sarah turned 18 and wanted to go to college out of state, her mother had a breakdown. How can you abandon me like this? After everything I've done for you? I need you here. You're the only one who understands me. Sarah's father backed her up. Your mother is fragile. You going away will destroy her. Is that what you want? Notice the manipulation? Sarah's completely normal desire for independence was reframed as abandonment. Her pursuing her own life was positioned as an attack on her mother. Sarah went to college anyway, but the guilt trips never stopped. Multiple calls every day. Text messages if she didn't answer. Are you okay? I'm worried about you. Why aren't you responding? And if Sarah set boundaries, Mom, I can't talk right now, I'm in class, her mother would respond with, I guess I'm not important to you anymore. I should have known you'd forget about me once you left. Every boundary was treated as a betrayal. Sarah graduated, got a job, and met Mark. Mark came from a completely different type of family. A family where boundaries were respected, where people could disagree without it becoming a crisis, where love didn't come with guilt attached. When Sarah and Mark got engaged, Sarah hoped things might improve, that becoming grandparents-to-be might help her parents mature and respect her more as an adult. She was wrong. When Sarah found out she was pregnant, she was excited but also nervous. She knew her parents would have opinions, and she was right. The moment Sarah told her mother about the pregnancy, the response wasn't congratulations or, I'm so happy for you. It was, finally, I've been waiting for this. I'm going to be such an amazing grandmother. This baby is exactly what I need in my life right now. Let that sink in for a moment. This baby is exactly what I need. Not what a blessing for you and Mark. Not, I'm excited to support you. But what I need. From that moment on, Sarah's mother acted like this pregnancy was about her. She told everyone she knew that she was going to be a grandmother. She started buying things for the baby without asking Sarah what she needed or wanted. She began planning how often she'd visit, how she'd help raise the baby, how she'd be there every single day. Sarah had created a baby registry with specific items she and Mark had researched and chosen. Her mother ignored it completely and bought whatever she wanted. When Sarah gently suggested that she'd prefer the items on her registry, her mother's response, I've raised children. I know what babies need better than you do. You'll thank me later. Sarah was already being dismissed as a parent, and the baby wasn't even born yet. Things escalated when Sarah's mother demanded to be at every doctor's appointment. Not asked. Demanded. I want to be there for the ultrasounds. I want to hear the heartbeat. I want to be part of every moment. Sarah explained that these were intimate moments she wanted to share with Mark, and that she'd be happy to share photos and updates afterward. Her mother's response was to cry and say, "You're shutting me out of my grandchild's life already. I knew you'd do this. You've always been selfish." At family gatherings, Sarah's mother would constantly touch Sarah's belly without asking. She'd make comments about Sarah's body, what she was eating, how much weight she was gaining. "You're eating that? That's not good for the baby. You're getting huge. Are you sure you're not having twins? In my day, we didn't gain this much weight during pregnancy." Every comment was wrapped in concern for the baby, but what it really was: criticism, control, boundary violation. When Sarah and Mark shared that they were naming their daughter Emma, Sarah's mother actually said, "I don't like that name. You should choose something else. What about Dorothy? That was my grandmother's name. The baby should be named Dorothy." Mark, bless him, finally spoke up. "With all due respect, this is our daughter and we'll choose her name." Sarah's mother turned to Sarah and said, "Are you going to let him talk to me like that? This is your baby too, not just his." Trying to create division between Sarah and Mark. Classic manipulation tactic. As Sarah's due date approached, she and Mark created a birth plan. They decided they wanted just the two of them in the delivery room. This was their first child, an intimate and vulnerable moment, and they wanted privacy. They told both sets of parents that they'd announce when Sarah went into labor, but asked everyone to wait until after the baby was born to come to the hospital. Mark's parents said, "Of course, whatever you need. We'll be ready whenever you're ready for visitors." Sarah's parents? A very different reaction. Sarah's mother was furious. "I'm your mother. I should be in that delivery room. I was there when you were born. You should want me there when my grandchild is born." Sarah tried to explain that this was a medical event, a vulnerable time, and she needed to focus on herself and the baby. Her mother's response? "After everything I've sacrificed for you, this is how you repay me? By excluding me from the most important moment of my life." Notice that phrasing? The most important moment of my life. Not Sarah's life. Hers. When Sarah went into labor, Mark called both sets of parents as promised. He told them Sarah was at the hospital, and they'd update everyone once the baby was born. Sarah's parents showed up at the hospital anyway. They sat in the waiting room for hours, despite being told to wait at home. When a nurse came out to ask if they were the family, Sarah's mother said, "Yes, we're the parents. We need to be in there with her." The nurse, confused, went back to check with Sarah. Sarah had to explicitly tell the hospital staff that her parents were not allowed in the delivery room under any circumstances. Emma was born after a difficult 20-hour labor. Sarah was exhausted. Mark was exhausted. But they were also overwhelmed with joy and love for this tiny person they'd created. The hospital staff helped them with the first feeding, the first diaper change. Sarah and Mark took those precious first photos. They held their daughter and marveled at her tiny fingers and toes. And then, after a few hours of bonding time, they were ready for visitors. Sarah's parents burst into the room, and yes, burst is the right word. Her mother didn't knock, didn't wait to be invited in. Just pushed the door open and rushed to Sarah's bedside. But she didn't ask how Sarah was feeling, didn't congratulate her on the birth. Instead, she said, "Where's my baby? Let me hold my granddaughter." Sarah was literally still in the hospital bed, still recovering, and her mother was already reaching for Emma. Mark gently said, "Let's give Sarah a moment. She just went through major physical trauma." Sarah's mother snapped, "I know what childbirth is like. I've done it twice. Now give me my grandchild." Mark looked at Sarah. Sarah, exhausted and overwhelmed, nodded. So Mark carefully handed Emma to her grandmother. And what happened next would change everything. Sarah's mother immediately started taking selfies with Emma. While Sarah watched from the hospital bed, still bleeding, still in pain, her mother was posting photos to Facebook. The caption, "My beautiful granddaughter is finally here. I'm so blessed. Being a grandmother is the best feeling in the world." Hashtag proud grandma, hashtag my baby. Sarah hadn't even had a chance to announce the birth herself. Her mother had stolen that moment and made it about her. But it got worse. Over the next 2 days in the hospital, Sarah's parents visited for hours at a time. They'd show up early in the morning and stay until visiting hours ended. When Sarah needed to breastfeed, her mother wouldn't leave the room. When Sarah asked for privacy, her mother said, "I'm your mother. There's nothing I haven't seen. Don't be ridiculous." When nurses came to check on Sarah's recovery, checking her bleeding, her stitches, intimate medical care, her mother stayed in the room despite Sarah asking her to step out. Sarah was told by doctors to rest and sleep when the baby slept. But every time Emma was sleeping and Sarah tried to nap, her mother would wake her up to ask questions. "Should we try a different swaddle? Do you think she's eating enough? In my day, we did things differently. You should try this instead." Constant commentary. Constant criticism disguised as help. Constant boundary violations. Finally, Sarah and Mark brought Emma home. Sarah thought, "Okay, now we can have privacy. Now we can figure out being parents without an audience." The next morning at 7 a.m., Sarah's parents showed up at their door. Unannounced. "We're here to help," her mother announced cheerfully, walking right past Mark without waiting to be invited in. Sarah's mother immediately took charge. She started reorganizing how Sarah had set up the nursery. "This isn't right. The changing table should be here. The crib should face that way. Trust me, I know what I'm doing." She criticized how Sarah was swaddling Emma, how she was holding her, how often she was feeding her. Everything Sarah did was wrong, and everything needed to be corrected. Mark pulled Sarah aside and whispered, "You need to say something. This is our house, our baby, our rules." But Sarah, exhausted and hormonal and drowning in postpartum emotions, couldn't find the words. Then came the incident that finally pushed Sarah to her breaking point. Sarah was in the nursery breastfeeding Emma. The door was closed. She was having a quiet, intimate moment with her daughter. Her mother opened the door without knocking and walked right in. When Sarah instinctively covered herself, her mother said, "Oh, please stop being so modest. Here, let me show you a better position for her to latch." And before Sarah could respond, her mother's hands were on Sarah's breast, adjusting how she was holding Emma, physically manipulating Sarah's body without consent. Sarah snapped, "Get out. Get out of this room right now." Her mother looked shocked. "What? I'm just trying to help. I said get out. I need privacy. I need you to leave me alone." Her mother's expression shifted from shock to hurt to anger in seconds. "Fine. I was just trying to be a good grandmother. I guess you don't want my help. I guess I'll just go home and never come back if that's what you want." And she left, dramatically, making sure Sarah knew that she was hurt and offended. Sarah sat there still holding Emma and started crying. Not because she regretted setting a boundary, but because the guilt was overwhelming. That voice in her head, the one that had been trained since childhood, was screaming at her. "You're a terrible daughter. She was just trying to help. You overreacted. You hurt her feelings. You need to apologize." But Mark found her and said something that Sarah really needed to hear. "You did nothing wrong. That was inappropriate. You have every right to privacy in your own home, especially while breastfeeding. Don't apologize for having boundaries." Within an hour, Sarah's phone was blowing up. Not just from her mother, but from her father, her siblings, her aunts, even family friends. "How could you kick your mother out like that? She's crying. You broke her heart. She just wants to be involved in her grandchild's life. You're being cruel and ungrateful." This is what's called flying monkeys, when a manipulator recruits others to do their emotional work for them. Sarah's mother had painted herself as the victim, and now everyone was attacking Sarah on her behalf. That night, after Emma was asleep, Sarah and Mark had a serious conversation. Mark had been patient, but he'd also been watching his wife be steamrolled by her parents for months now. "This can't continue," Mark said. "Emma is 1 week old and your mother has already violated every boundary we've set. It's not going to get better. It's going to get worse." Sarah knew he was right. She'd been making excuses for her parents her entire life, but now it wasn't just about her. It was about protecting her daughter. Together, they wrote out clear boundaries. 1. No unannounced visits. You must call first and get permission to come over. 2. When asked to leave or give privacy, you leave immediately without argument. 3. No posting photos of Emma on social media without permission. 4. Sarah and Mark's parenting decisions are final and not up for debate. 5. No criticism of Sarah's postpartum body, her breastfeeding, or her parenting. Sarah drafted an email to her parents, clearly laying out these boundaries and explaining that if they couldn't respect them, visits would be put on hold. Sarah rewrote that email a dozen times. Each version felt either too harsh or too apologetic. She was still worried about hurting her parents' feelings, even though they'd shown no concern for hers. Finally, with Mark's encouragement, she sent it. And then they waited. The response came quickly. Very quickly. And it was not what they hoped for. Sarah's mother called immediately. She was screaming. Actually screaming. How dare you send me a list of rules about my granddaughter? I have rights. I'm her grandmother. You can't keep me from her. Sarah tried to explain. Mom, these are just basic boundaries. We're not keeping you away. We're just asking for respect. Respect. After how you treated me yesterday. After you kicked me out when I was trying to help? I should be the one setting boundaries. I should be protecting my granddaughter from a mother who clearly has no idea what she's doing. After Sarah hung up, the text messages started. You're making a huge mistake. You need me. You're a first-time mother. You don't know what you're doing. Your postpartum hormones are making you irrational. You're not thinking clearly. Mark is controlling you. He's turning you against your own family. One day Emma will ask why she doesn't have a relationship with her grandmother, and you'll have to tell her it's because you were cruel and selfish. Every message was designed to hit Sarah where she was most vulnerable, her fear of being a bad mother, her postpartum emotional state, her lifelong conditioning to put her mother's feelings first. Sarah's father sent his own message. Your mother is heartbroken. You're destroying this family. Is this really the example you want to set for your daughter? That family doesn't matter. Sarah's siblings joined in. One said Sarah was overreacting. Another said she was being unfair. A third said that Mom might be a bit much sometimes, but she means well. She means well. How many times are we told to accept bad behavior because someone means well? Sarah held firm on the boundaries. She sent one more message. These boundaries are non-negotiable. When you're ready to respect them, we can discuss visits. Until then, we need space. Her parents' response? They showed up at the house again. Unannounced. Again. Mark answered the door and calmly said, We've asked you to call before coming over. You need to leave. Sarah's mother tried to push past him. I want to see my granddaughter. You can't keep her from me. Mark stood his ground. You're not respecting our boundaries. You need to leave now, or we'll have to consider more permanent measures. Sarah's parents finally left, but not before her mother shouted, You're going to regret this. I'll get a lawyer. I have grandparent rights. And that threat? That was the final straw. Sarah and Mark consulted with a family lawyer. In their state, grandparent rights only apply in specific circumstances, usually when the parents are unfit or when a grandparent has been a primary caregiver. Sarah's parents had no legal standing, but the fact that they'd threatened legal action showed Sarah something important. This was never about respecting her as a parent. This was about control, about ownership, about her mother getting what she wanted, no matter what Sarah needed. Sarah made the hardest decision of her life. She blocked her parents' phone numbers. She blocked them on social media. She sent one final email. Your refusal to respect our boundaries, your threats of legal action, and your continued attempts to control our family have made it clear that contact right now is not healthy. We are going no contact. Do not come to our house. Do not contact us through other family members. When and if we're ready to revisit this relationship, we will reach out. Until then, please respect this decision. And just like that, Emma's grandparents were cut off completely. It's now been 8 months since Sarah cut off her parents, and she wanted to share what life has been like since making that decision. First, the practical reality: life got so much easier. Without the constant criticism, without the surprise visits, without the guilt trips and manipulation, Sarah was able to actually figure out being a mother. She and Mark developed their own parenting style. They made mistakes and learned from them without someone constantly telling them they were doing it wrong. Emma is thriving. She's a happy, healthy baby who's surrounded by love, real love. Not conditional, controlling love. Mark's parents stepped up in the most beautiful way. They call before visiting. They respect Sarah and Mark's parenting decisions. When they offer advice, it's gentle and requested. They treat Sarah with respect and kindness. Emma has grandparents in her life, just not Sarah's parents, and Sarah had to make peace with that being okay. Sarah also learned something important. Her parents' relationship with Emma was never about Emma. It was about her mother's need for control and validation. A healthy grandparent relationship puts the child's needs and the parent's boundaries first. Sarah's mother couldn't do that. The extended family remains divided. About half understood Sarah's decision and quietly supported her. The other half sided with her parents. Sarah lost relationships with some aunts, uncles, and cousins who believed she was being cruel. And that hurt. But Sarah realized, anyone who thinks she should accept abuse for the sake of family harmony doesn't actually care about her well-being. Some family members who initially criticized Sarah have since reached out to apologize. They said things like, "I didn't realize how bad it was. Your mother told us a very different story. Now that I've seen her behavior with others, I understand." Sarah's mother, predictably, plays the victim on social media. Vague posts about ungrateful children, and being denied the right to see my granddaughter, and prayers for family healing. The posts get lots of supportive comments from people who don't know the full story. "I'm so sorry you're going through this. Some people don't appreciate what they have. Your daughter will regret this someday." Sarah had to learn to let go of controlling the narrative. People who know her and her parents' history understand. People who don't, their opinions don't matter. Sarah started therapy specifically to deal with the guilt and grief of cutting off her parents. Because even though she knows she made the right decision, it still hurts. She grieves the grandparents Emma won't have. But more than that, she grieves the grandparents she wished her parents could have been. The supportive, respectful, loving grandparents who celebrate their grandchild without making it about themselves. The therapist reminded Sarah, "You didn't take Emma's grandparents away from her. Your parents' inability to respect boundaries did that. You gave them every opportunity to have a relationship within healthy parameters. They chose control over connection." 2 months ago, Sarah received a letter from her mother. She almost didn't open it. Inside was a long letter that started with, "I've had time to think, and I realize I may have made some mistakes." Sarah's heart jumped. Was this the apology she'd been hoping for? The acknowledgement she needed? But as she kept reading, it became clear. This wasn't an apology. It was another manipulation attempt. "I may have been a bit overbearing, but it's only because I love Emma so much. I just want to be part of her life. Surely you can understand that? Every grandmother wants to be close to their grandchildren." There was no acknowledgement of specific behaviors. No commitment to respecting boundaries. Just, "I may have made some mistakes," followed by more excuses and justifications. Sarah wrote back a short response. "Thank you for your letter. I'm glad you've had time to reflect. If you're serious about having a relationship with Emma, here's what needs to happen. Acknowledgement of specific boundary violations, a genuine apology without justifications, and a commitment to respecting our parenting decisions. Family therapy would be necessary before reestablishing contact. These terms are non-negotiable." She never received a response. Because acknowledging fault and doing the work to change? That's not something Sarah's mother is willing to do. Sarah says the guilt pops up sometimes, usually triggered by something small. She sees other families with involved grandparents and feels sad for a moment. But then she remembers, Emma is protected. Emma is growing up in a home where boundaries are respected, where love isn't conditional, where she'll never have to manage adults' emotions or earn affection through performance. Emma will grow up knowing that it's okay to set boundaries, that family doesn't mean accepting mistreatment, that she deserves respect and healthy relationships. And that's the greatest gift Sarah could give her daughter. So Sarah asked the internet, "Am I the asshole for refusing to let my parents see their grandchildren?" The overwhelming response, "And not the asshole." Thousands of people validated her decision. Many shared their own stories of setting boundaries with toxic grandparents, of choosing their children's well-being over family expectations. But there were also critics, people who said, "Every child deserves grandparents. You're depriving your daughter of family. You're being too harsh, nobody's perfect." This story raises uncomfortable questions. Do grandparents have an inherent right to access their grandchildren, even if they can't respect the parents' boundaries? Is it wrong to cut off family members who refuse to change toxic behaviors? Where's the line between being too harsh and protecting your children? Can someone who was a toxic parent suddenly become a healthy grandparent? I want to hear from you. Drop a comment. Would you let toxic grandparents have access to your children? Do you think Sarah should try again to reconcile? If you're a grandparent, how do you feel about these boundaries? Have you had to make similar decisions about protecting your kids from family? There's no easy answer here. But I think we can all agree. Children deserve to be protected, even if that protection means setting boundaries with family members. If this story resonated with you, smash that like button. Subscribe for more real moral dilemmas that make you think. And check out the cards on screen for more family drama stories. Remember, setting boundaries doesn't make you the bad guy. Refusing to respect boundaries does. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.